Okay. Okay, so I thought today what we could do is practice really the foundation, one of the foundation techniques that Shinzen Young teaches in his unified mindfulness system. And it's called the see, hear, feel technique, and it's a form of noting. And this particular form of noting was inspired by the classical Mahasi system. So with the noting, we could have a very inclusive focus range. But what I'd like to do today is narrow our see, hear, feel to the kind of outer environment. So this is going to be the objective, kind of physical reality and the experiences that we encounter in that focus range. And what we're not going to include is kind of the inner reactive world. So that are our mental thoughts, the inner visuals, the inner mental talk will not be included in this meditation, as well as the kind of emotional space. So we're going to exclude or leave those out for this guidance. So I'm going to give us a little tour of the three sensory categories we will be including, and then we'll go ahead and practice the see, hear, feel technique. So we're going to keep our eyes open for this practice, which might be a bit unusual for some folks. So leaving the eyes open, let's start with connecting with the outer visual space. So this is any visual experience that we have with the through the eyes, with the eyes open. So just letting the attention be free, you can allow the gaze to land on something. And it could be something very close to you, it could be something across the room, it could be an unfocused gaze. But wherever your attention lands, holding your gaze in that space, on that spot. And oftentimes with noting techniques, once the attention has landed, we use a label to help kind of note or acknowledge the sensory experience that we're going to be using as the object of our meditation for this short time. And in this case, the label would be see. So we hang out with our gaze landing on a particular place. Use the label see. You can use it mentally. You could also say it out loud. And after a few seconds, maybe 5 or 10 seconds, you're going to release your attention from that place. Let the gaze kind of float freely, and then again, let it land. You could use the label see. And then you're going to just hang out and start to notice qualities of that sensory experience you're having. So it might be noticing lines, colors, shadows, and dark. If something's out of focus, it may seem like there's very soft, defined lines and details. And you might also notice as you hold your gaze in a particular place that even your eyes might very subtly move to take in very different aspects or kind of micro movements. And you might notice your eyes kind of come in and out of focus a little as you hold your gaze. So just observing all of that, letting the attention be free, allow the gaze to once again land. And we're going to try to have an experience here that's less mediated by mind. So if my attention, for example, lands on the computer screen, which it just had, I see letters in white against black. But I'm going to try to kind of not look for the meaning of what I'm looking at. Almost as though I'm seeing this thing for the first time and I have no idea what I'm looking at, but noticing there's a bit of brightness in places, some sharp lines around these defined white areas. There's kind of a halo that's kind of vibrating. So we don't look for the content or the meaning of what we're taking in. We're looking at the characteristics or qualities, almost as though if I turned my head now and had to draw what I saw, what kind of details can I notice? Textures. So we're going to now bring the attention to the physical sensations in the body. You can still have your eyes open if you like. I think that actually would be preferable to leave the eyes open, but bring the attention into the physical body and see if you can connect with a sensation that's arising that, to the best of your guess, is not related to your emotional state. So it might be the feeling of pressure where your body's meeting the support beneath you. It might be a feeling of coolness or heat in a part of the body. It could be a discomfort, could be a feeling of itching, maybe being a little hungry, maybe being a little full. Could be the feeling of your air passing in and out through the nostrils. So we're going to let the attention land. And if there's more than one physical sensation happening that your attention gets drawn to, just zoom in on one. Just choose one place in the body to really let your attention land and kind of soak in what's happening there. How would you describe this sensation? Is it very full and heavy? Is it kind of light and filmy? You might notice it takes up a certain amount of space. It might have a kind of a shape to it. So the label we would use here is feel. We're connecting with a feeling in the body, physical sensation. So every, say, few seconds, you can find your own pace that works for you. Letting the attention land, you can use a label feel to acknowledge that this is now the focus of our attention for the next few seconds. Really penetrate it with your consciousness. Learn as much as you can about this sensation. And after a time, you can release the attention, kind of let it gently cover the entire body globally and see where it gets drawn to land next. And it might return to the same place. And again, you could use the label feel. Labels are helpful to develop equanimity, whether the sensation we're experiencing is very pleasurable or uncomfortable. We use a neutral label, feel. It's a sensation. Sensations of different qualities. And again, really important not to go into the story or history of why that sensation is there. Almost again as if you've never experienced this before in the body and you're quite curious and open as to what you'll discover. And we're going to come now to the last and third sensory category, and that's here. That's going to be our external auditory space. So now we're going to shift our attention to the sounds that are coming in through the ears. You'll hear the sound of my voice coming and going. Maybe the hum of your computer, maybe sounds in your environment, people or animals moving around, activity outside of your house. So again, once your attention kind of goes to a particular sound, for example, to the sound of my voice, you may notice the sound comes to an end, or that there's space between the sounds. There's space or silence between my words. So just letting your attention be, connecting with the sounds, and then connecting with the silence between the sounds. And the label for this sensory category is hear, Hear. And you might actually be drawn to the sound of silence. So we can hold our attention. We can really absorb and inhabit that experience of the lack of sound. And the more we hang out in this sound space, we may notice there's actually very subtle sounds we become aware of. And once again, trying to have an experience of this auditory space without so much mind, without the mind saying, oh, I think that's my neighbor pulling up into his driveway. Maybe just hear the sound, the quality of the sound itself. Is it muffled and quiet? Is it sharp and distinct? Does it seem like there's more than one kind of sound woven together that you can hear? Does it sound very smooth and kind of streaming, or does it waver or fluctuate? So, doing our best to not go into the reason the sound is arising, but experiencing it in a more pure way. Oftentimes, I think about those people who make sound effects for films. You know, how am I going to make the sound of a person walking down a wet road? So we can kind of do that with this experience with the external auditory environment. Here's a sound I'm hearing. What does that kind of sound like without referring to what the mind wants to present as the source of that sound? Does it sound kind of wet? Does it sound dry and thin? Is there a tone or pitch that changes? So now that we've gone through that tour, we've done the see out of the external environment, the hear out, and the feel out, which is physical feelings. We're going to open our attention to all three of those sensory categories. So, what that means is my attention is open to the entire objective experience. And I'm going to notice where my attention lands. And let's just say I have an itch at my shoulder and I hear my dog barking. If more than one sensory category presents itself, again, just choose one. So maybe I'm going to choose to zoom in on the sensation in my shoulder and let the dog barking be in the background. I'm not going to attend to that. So we're going to let the attention land on one sensory experience, whether it's see, hear, or feel. We're going to use the label see, hear, or feel to note or acknowledge what that object of our meditation is going to be for that short time. And we're going to hang out with that experience, that sensation, and see what we can learn about it. But don't think about it. We don't want to go into stories or history or narrative or ideas. What's actually happening in the moment? What are the qualities of this experience? Trying as best we can to drop the mind's ideas around what we're hearing, seeing, or feeling. So I'm going to say my labels out loud just for a few seconds to give you a sense of my pacing, give you a sense of how the practice may unfold. Feel, feel, see, see, feel. So we'll continue to practice, see, hear, feel. And this practice is a wonderful way to develop our concentration skills. One of the pillars of meditation practice, training the attention. So if my attention lands with a sensation in the body, it may get pulled in those few seconds to other sensory categories. I might start getting pulled into the mind to hear some of my own inner mental talk commenting on my experience, or I might hear a sound that distracts me. So to hold our concentration, to really zoom in with our attention and hold it with just that one particular sensory experience that's arising, will strengthen our ability to concentrate on what we deem relevant at any time. And by holding our attention and really penetrating it with our consciousness to learn more about the subtlety of these experiences, is developing our sensory clarity. So again, kind of dropping below the conceptual mind and maybe having more of a subtle or energetic, perhaps, experience. And when we allow everything else to be in the background while we're holding our meditation object in the foreground, that develops our equanimity, our allowing. So if I'm holding my attention to a sound in the environment and my knee starts to throb, I'm just going to allow that physical sensation to be present. It doesn't need to stop. Nothing needs to be any different. I'm just not going to attend to anything other than the object of my meditation in that moment. If you find the mind is quite strong and you're getting pulled into thoughts or being distracted outside of the meditation object, try using those labels silently in the mind or out loud. That's an option for you. Using the labels can be really helpful in keeping us on track with the practice. You may notice that your attention gets drawn to one of these sensory categories, but it's actually fairly inactive. My attention may get drawn to the silence of the room I'm in. It might get drawn to a part of my body that actually feels quite restful and neutral. So we can soak that in. We can be very present for even relatively inactive sensory experiences. If you're noticing some emotional reactivity, some activation in the inner feel space, just turning away from that, just allowing that to be, but returning the attention over and over to that outer objective reality, the sounds, the visuals, and the physical sensations. And we don't need to have the attention land on all three categories. My attention may continue to land on the physical sensations. There may be a strong physical sensation present. So we allow that to be. We're not trying to make anything happen, just noting, acknowledging, being present, and allowing with what is in this moment. If your attention is drawn to the outer visual environment, you may have a very broad, unfocused gaze, not focusing on anything in particular, or your gaze may land on an object and be more narrowed. So we're not looking to focus our attention on a particular object unless that happens. Maybe a very unfocused experience for us. And noticing what that is like. Where's their light? Where's their shadow, lines, colors, textures, shapes? If the mind wanders, we just have a few minutes left to practice, returning the attention over and over to this focus range, just with a very light heart. There's nothing wrong when the attention wanders. It's a very expected, normal part of practice. So just developing our concentration by repeating the intention to bring the attention back. If we're ever experiencing in our daily life a time when the mind is very strong and problematic, maybe looping negative thinking, or if we're experiencing a very challenging emotion, finding it a bit intense, this is a wonderful practice to anchor out, to anchor the attention away from that kind of internal reactive world. You may choose to just do see out. That's a practice that you find more accessible to you. Or feel sensations in the body. So, whatever works. It's just another option for us in practice, especially out in life. Informal practice, practice in motion, practice out in our day. We could weave this practice in very easily to most of our day.